1. Welcome back to the Upper Tier Podcast, the football podcast we bring you each and every week on the Dynamo Podcast Network. Head over to YouTube, smash that subscribe and bell notification button. And we continue tonight our Legends series. Joining me tonight, as always, Darren McCumminsky. How are we doing, Darren?
Evening, Niall. How are we, brother? All good?
Not a bother at all. I mentioned to you this morning that we were thinking of doing the Legends series tonight with the one David Beckham, and you sounded pretty excited.
Yeah, I was, man. I have to be honest. Like, he holds a special place in my heart, Dale Becks, I have to be honest. You know, from obviously when he kind of showed up on the scene at United, that kind of 94, 95, I'd have been about 10 years of age. So it's prime, you know, when you're getting players on the back of your jersey and stuff like that. And I've been a massive Beckham fan ever since, you know, strutting around in the LA Galaxy jersey when he went there and all of that kind of thing, you know. I just think he's unbelievable, and I don't think he gets half the credit he deserves for the player he was. So yeah, delighted to be joining you tonight, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it anyway. So, born David Robert Joseph Beckham, 2nd of May 1975. So that makes him, I think, currently 46. Born in Leytonstone, London, England. So kind of a London boy, isn't it? Ending up in Manchester. So it was an interesting dynamic as well. Of course, his occupation, of course, was a footballer, but also a businessman, and we'll get into that without a shadow of a doubt.
Absolutely.
Obviously, works with organisations, UNICEF and Malaria No More and all that stuff. So a huge amount of charity work from the man as well. That definitely goes unnoticed without a shadow of a doubt. Married, of course, to Victoria Beckham, Victoria Adams of Spice Girl fame, but also lots of other fame as well. Has 4 children, including Brooklyn and Romeo, who are the 2 that we tend to hear about. Let's get into his career, youth career, 91 to 93 at Man United in the youths, 92 to 2003, Manchester United, 265 appearances, 62 goals. Now, of those 62 goals, you would say 62 goals, 62 amazing goals, I would say.
Yeah.
Not too many tap-ins in that sort of series.
Absolutely not.
When we've been talking on these episodes about Moments FC, which is what Man United is like at the moment, this is a man for Moments FC, if there was ever a man. Obviously went to Real Madrid then, 116 appearances, 13 goals. LA Galaxy, 98 appearances, 18 goals. Couple of loan sort of moves to AC Milan in kind of that mix up in the off season and stuff like that between the MLS and the European leagues. And then 2013, Paris Saint-Germain, 10 appearances. Obviously with England as well, 1996 to 2009, 115 appearances, 17 goals. Fair to say his career at England was kind of strange because he was, to use a saying from wrestling, sometimes the heel and sometimes the face. Very
absolutely.
Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, he was able to. I mean, obviously, we're talking back now on that sending off against Argentina and stuff like that. England get dumped out of the World Cup, and they're burning effigies of David Beckham at football stadiums all around the UK. And it was probably then that we actually started seeing the best of him. You know, which to me says an awful lot about the man. That even in the face of that type of adversity, he just went, you know what, I'm just going to do what I'm here to do and just, you know, knuckle down and just be the absolute best I can be. And he went through a phenomenal period. You know, I think you mentioned it. He was a human highlight reel for goals. He really was. Like, is there a better free kick taker of all time? I don't know. You know, when you've seen him obviously in the throes of the qualification for the Euros and that with England, and they're playing Greece and they're 2-1 down and you need that draw and stuff like that. And he stands over that free kick and you're just thinking of every player in world football, who would you want over that free kick? And it was just his moment, wasn't it? And that was his moment to kind of turn the tables from that kind of 0 to hero with England. And I mean, it was a cracking free kick. And it kind of set him on the path then, didn't it? You know, he was an England captain and he was England poster boy then, and he was meeting Mandela as England captain, albeit with a couple of dodgy cornrows, I think, if I remember rightly. Yeah. But just, you know, he was Mr. England. He was there all the time. he was looking for the absolute best out of lads, and he wasn't happy if they weren't putting the shift in, which for me was probably something he'd gotten from United and from that kind of generation that he went through at United, where you were expected to go and do absolutely everything for the shirt and everything for the badge and everything to win that game, and nothing else was acceptable. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he brought that everywhere he went.
Yeah, there was definitely a drive and a winning mentality to him, wasn't there? In terms of and right till like he epitomized sort of that whole, what we call about that Fergie kind of Man United culture, that you fight till the 95th, 96th minute, you don't give up and stuff like that. And I say that was probably prevalent through that whole class of 92, in fairness. They were unique that way, in fairness to them.
Absolutely. I mean, he even had to go through something like that when he was at Madrid. Because obviously when he was at Madrid, I think it might have been Carlo Ancelotti kind of told him, listen, you can start training with the B team. I've no need for a guy like you, and blah. Beckham said, oh, okay, and went and trained with the Bs and kept training. And I think Ancelotti mentioned he was looking across and he kept seeing him, he was there every day and he was putting in the effort, and he thought, there's something about this guy, Yeah. And he kind of got his way back into the first team, and he was asked to train back with the first team, and the next minute he was playing games, and then he was being influential, and then all of a sudden you're thinking, he's gone from being this, obviously, there's a perception with David Beckham when you see him and you think, oh, he's a spice boy, he's this, he's that, but maybe off the pitch he was like that, but on the pitch he was very much focused, and he had that winning mentality, and he didn't give up, and he got his place back in that Madrid team, and I think Carlo Ancelotti speaks very, very highly after him, and stuff like that.
It was interesting because I was thinking of doing this one today, and I thought it's a really good one, but as I was going through TikTok earlier, I was just flicking through TikTok just in general, and the video came up of the one, remember, where he crossed the ball into Roberto Carlos for the volley at Real Madrid.
Yeah.
What a cross. The way he floated the ball into him there, it was like in slow motion, landed right on Roberto Carlos, and he just volleyed it into the back of the net from distance. Now, this was unbelievable.
His delivery was something that United failed to replace for quite a while. When he left and he went to Madrid, obviously we moved different players in and around the pitch, and we had good footballers, but we didn't have anyone, we're probably still struggling for somebody that delivers the ball like that, who can put the ball continuously and constantly into an area where it's just under threat. I think I heard Van Nistelrooy speak, and he just said he knew when Beckham got the ball, he knew what run he had to make to get on because he said, I know he'll hit me. He says, or I know we'll put it in an area that I can go and attack. Yeah. And he said, as a goal scorer, you can ask for nothing more than somebody to give you that type of service,
And even on the episode the other day when we were chatting, you were talking about the way Aaron Wan-Bissaka, he would just need to, practice. Yeah. And I remember back in the day, there was always talk that Beckham would always stay back after training, and he'd be hitting hundreds of balls, just to perfect his dead ball delivery and his free kicks and all that kind of stuff. They speak fondly about how he worked so hard after training, near alone in training,
And I think that's something that, again, I heard it at United before and in and around the place, where people said that the fourth person to do anything like that was Cantona. And he would do a little bit extra. He might be the first one there, and he might be the last one to leave, and he'd work on free kicks, and he'd take penalties, and he'd be working on his touch and this and that. And obviously then when the class of 92 come in, they've got this guy, who's a leader for them, and he's involved, and they're thinking, well, if this guy does it, why don't we do it? Why don't we give it a try? Why don't we be the last ones out on that training pitch? So it is a cultural thing that you can, it's not necessarily that's something that's natural to people, but when they start seeing their peers and when they start seeing people they look up to strive to be better day in, day out, that's why we talk about at times certain players are just good to have around your club. For me, at the minute, I would say Cavani is he's going to do as much off the pitch at Old Trafford as he does on the pitch. Because if you look at his work rate, and having and his finishing and stuff like that, guys like your Greenwoods and your Rashfords and your Sanchos, they've got to be looking at this guy who's been one of the top players in world football for the last 10 plus years and saying, well, he's a great footballer, but he's also working his absolute socks off. He's putting it in, and that's why he's getting out of this, what he's getting out, because of the work rate, because of the effort, because of the hunger. And it's something that we need to keep giving the younger players and making sure that they they introduce that as early as they can in their careers to kind of prolong things and get the best out of them,
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a quick rundown through some of his honours, obviously, just to put it in a bit of perspective. I'm sure United viewers who watch our show, they would know this inside out, to be honest. But 1 FAU Cup, 6 Premier Leagues, 2 FA Cups, 2 Charity Shields, 1 Champions League, which I find weird when I say 1 Champions League with this man. You would think he had 1, 2 or 3 or 4,
Yeah.
1 Intercontinental Cup, 1 La Liga, 1 Super Cup in Spain, 2 MLS Cups, and a French league with PSG. And on the individual side of things, I mean, he's won everything from the Sir Matt Busby awards and all this kind of thing. The one that sticks out, he was unlucky with a runner-up to the Ballon d'Or in '99. Some would say he should have won it, that he was hard done by. But let's get into his career at United. I mean, when I think of David Beckham, I mean, obviously we always think about, like, the influence that Victoria had on him. I think he's the first footballer that went out there and created this whole brand type thing, this brand Beckham. I think he was the first one to go out there and really, when we talk about players and image rights and sponsorship and all that kind of thing, he was that one out there, from, it was a mad, like, sponsorships with Brill Cream for his hair, and then he'd suddenly shave his head. And, like, I'm sure he was involved, Calvin Klein, Armani. He was linked through Victoria with a lot of these fashion houses because she had built up a repertoire with them and stuff like that. But she was the first one. She was nearly like his manager in the background, wasn't she? In terms of creating this brand Beckham and putting it out there. And in some respects, when you look at his career, like, Manchester United obviously is the biggest club in the world, and he kind of, in a way, kind of outgrew it a little bit, didn't he, in terms of his off-field activities compared to the club?
I think, I know there's probably no love lost between Sir Alex and Victoria, he was one of Fergie's golden boys. He'd come through that class in '92, and I think Fergie would have been more than happy to see him there for another couple of years, but I think the off-field influence was causing too much issue. There was a famous game against Leeds where he got benched, and we were away at Ellen Road, and you've seen him sitting there with the cap on. He might have even been dropped out of the squad completely, and you see him sitting there, and he was dropped, I think. And I think the rumours at the time were that he was after being at London Fashion Week or something like this, and he was late getting back. There was a show, she was involved in a show, and he was late getting back, and he was late for something. And anyway, Fergie kind of pulled the plug and said, listen, this is out here, you're gonna have to fucking knuckle down and start focusing on football and not worrying about, what fashion houses and what shows you're going to be at and stuff. But I suppose that's the kind of lifestyle. I mean, she was a mega star in her own right, like the Spice Girls at one stage,
massive,
were the female equivalent to the Beatles.
Yeah,
it was huge, and it was Spice Girl mania. And everywhere you went, they were on a billboard. There was concerts, there was everything. They were in your face, in a nice kind of a way, because I mean, people were very, very fond of them. But she obviously built up that brand herself, and then she starts seeing Beckham, and that kind of all. It kind of, there was a little bit of a synergy there between the two of them, where you've got two really, really like good-looking people. They're squeaky clean, so to speak. He's an England footballer. She's a singer. Like, brands were climbing over each other to kind of put their names on them.
Yeah.
And I suppose there's a lot of pressure to that as well, because while he was a footballer first, when somebody's giving you X, Y, and Z to go and promote their brand, I'm sure you're going to feel like you need to promote it to a certain level. And maybe because of his on-field and the stuff that Ferguson wanted him to do, he found that difficult,
Trying to find a balance.
Try and find the balance, between keeping your missus happy and doing what you want to do, you know what I mean?
And I remember back at that time as well, correct me now if I'm wrong, she was very vocal and very protective of him when he wasn't treated right at the club, wasn't she?
Yeah, that's right. She was.
And I think that kind of, it led us on to kind of Bootgate and all that other stuff that went on. But it was kind of like, if she felt he had been hard done by, and of course, Fergie being the purist, Fergie was all about the training and the football and the drive and the ambition and the will to win and, that drive. He was never a man for image rights and stuff like that. He hated all that side of football. without a shadow of a doubt. And Beckham, of course, was the pin-up boy for it, really. You know what I mean? Because he just had brands dangling out in between the two of them. And she very much acted like his manager, didn't she, in terms of his career and stuff like that. She sent him in different directions through fashion houses and stuff like that. I know he did a bit of modeling. He did a bit of catwalk stuff as well, as far as I know as well.
Yeah.
But he was getting attached to these big fashion houses. And that whole business side of it was developing all the time. And it really, I think at the time when things broke down, I remember she was so vocal. And I was saying to myself, if you're going to get into the press and you're going to get really vocal up against Alex Ferguson, there's only going to be one winner. and that's really what it came down to.
There was an awful lot of orchestrating going on in the background, you know. And ultimately, for me, that's what led to him leaving United, you know, because I think from a footballing point of view, things were still on the incline that we could have kept him and he wasn't going to be dead weight around like that. You know, we didn't sell him to Madrid when we didn't need him anymore.
Yeah.
But I think the headache became too much for Ferguson to deal with because, you know, yourself, you've obviously got a certain amount of pull as his gaffer and as his manager. But when he goes home in the evening time and she's talking in his ear, what pull do you have in that situation? You know what I mean? So yeah, I think in the end that ultimately that was the end of it for him, you know. And I know you hear talking, oh, she wanted to go to Madrid because there was, you know, fashion and, you know, the obviously the weather and stuff like that is better and all like that. But, you know, there's loads of different reasons why he could have. But I think ultimately for me, part of it was down to he had, as you said earlier on, he had outgrown United almost.
Yeah, I think,
and there was a need to kind of, if there was an idea that maybe there was somewhere bigger, a bigger billboard to promote brand Beckham.
Yeah.
At that stage, it was Real Madrid because at that stage they were going through the Galacticos era. You know, where you've got Zidane and Figo and Ronaldo and Roberto Carlos. And this is just a star-studded lineup of absolute world ballers. And for him to be able to attach himself to that from a marketing point of view, again, it is a genius stroke.
Yeah,
you know,
and it's an interesting thing when you look back on it and you look at it now, because I mean, obviously when he went to Real Madrid, they nearly encouraged it. They wanted more of it. They wanted their guys related to fashion houses and catwalks and be with superstar models and all this kind of stuff. Any promotion they could get, they encouraged it, you know. And then it's interesting when you think about United at the time. I say to people at the time, United in terms of that Premier League era, they were the first club really to recognize branding and sponsorship and all that kind of stuff to become this mammoth revenue generating brand globally, you know. And it's weird that it was like as if his timing, it's like as if he got out of the traps first. And then United recognized that this is a whole massive revenue stream here we can latch onto. And then they were kind of just behind him on the curve. And when he went to Madrid, then Madrid obviously were all in on that because they just wanted superstars. And because these guys were so talented as well, you know, like if you missed a training session on a Tuesday because you were, you know, front page in Paris on a catwalk or a fashion house, it wasn't that big a deal because these guys were superstars. So it didn't make that much of a difference anyway in terms of their play on the pitch or their position in the
and
team.
they had such a plethora of talent at Madrid that if he was out for the week, maybe it wasn't as big an issue as it was if he was at United, you know. Because they had so many replacements, and there was every time you opened the cupboard there was another Galactico, and you thought, Jesus, how many of these guys do you have in a team? You know. And I think that's the very surprising thing, like you said earlier on. One Champions League I find mental to believe, because obviously he won that in 99 with United, and I mean he was at Madrid for 7 years. 2003
to 2007.
Okay, 4 years.
5 years maybe.
And didn't win one at Madrid. And in the team and in that Galactico era, I'm just shocked that they didn't pick up another one, you know?
Yeah, it's strange, all right. I sent you, one of the things I sent you, I wanted to get your comment on it. He was ranked third in the all-time Man United number sevens, behind Eric Cantona and Ronaldo. What you thinking on that? Correct? Would you question it? Correct?
I think it's fairly close, you know. The United fans are funny in a sense, and you know there's so much held, so much esteem attached to Cantona. You know, Cantona for United fans was the watershed moment.
Yeah, he's mythical, isn't he?
He is. There's magical powers there, absolutely. You know, and when people talk about it, when United fans talk about, the greatest number 7s at the club, and that jersey itself is so iconic for United. I find even if you're not a Cantona fan, you're thinking Cantona. You know, it's just the way we've been it's kind of ingrained in us to just think like that, and he's like that unicorn a little bit, Cantona, because we have to remember he wasn't there for a massive amount of time. He really wasn't. Like, he didn't spend 10 or 12 seasons there and win, 8 league titles and 2 European Cups. And I mean, from a European football point of view, he wasn't part of any sort of success at United. Everything was attached to that Premier League because United had gone so long without winning that Premier League. And I think fans saw it as that we only returned to that top table, having brought Eric to the club. And I think that kind of gets him over the line. I would argue, for me, I would probably have it the opposite. I think Ronaldo was just out of this world. And I've seen both play live. I've seen all three of them play live. Thankfully, I'm lucky enough to say I've seen them all play live. But for me, I don't think David or Eric are quite at the table that Ronaldo was at. Now, again, there's United fans will argue that all day long. I would personally have it Ronaldo, Cantona, Beckham. But listen, if you're in the top 3 at a club like United and with an iconic jersey like that, you're a serious footballer.
You're in good company, aren't you?
You're in good company. You really are.
So tell us this: if you look at their careers in isolation, just at Man United, forget about what they went on and did and stuff like that, and you're running out through the famous tunnel there. Are you bringing Ronaldo out with you in number 7, or are you bringing Beckham out with you in number 7? I think it's between those two, aren't you? Eric is probably 3rd, is he?
No, well, again, Eric does something different. Eric makes everybody believe they're, 6 inches taller. They're a little bit stronger because you look to Eric on the pitch and everyone thinks, we've got him on our team. Do you know? Whereas don't necessarily think Ronaldo makes you feel that way. But, he can do something that maybe the others can't do. And then I feel like Beckham is different as well. He's got a different kind of a quality because, there's nobody on that pitch who's going to outwork David Beckham. So he's going to do, and when he became England captain and we became leader and stuff like that, he became that because of how he performed. I mean, like, his work rate for a guy that played on the right-hand side of an attacking position was phenomenal. He was up and down constantly when a lot of other wingers weren't. They were maybe guys that came to life when they got the ball, but they weren't guys that were putting tackles in when they were chasing somebody down and they were about to get in on Gary Neville one-on-one, and you'd see him put a tackle in or you'd see him get back goal sider. His work rate was fantastic, and that's where his kind of leadership was for me. It was more of a showing, and then people saying, well, that's what I see, this is what I'll do, So 3 very different characters, But he also, he had a little spell at United as well where he actually played through the centre. Because at one stage there was discussions about maybe he'd be a centre midfielder, because obviously with his range of passing and stuff like that, he could pick out a 6 minutes from a mile away. And he did. He played a number of games there for us, and he'd pick the ball up in centre midfield and maybe he'd take a couple of strides forward when there was a little bit of space. And I mean, when you've got that right foot, you could just unleash some sort of a thunderbolt into the top corner. And he did it on a few occasions. I think ultimately, the central role didn't work for him. Well, not necessarily that it didn't work, but he got you so much more from that right hand side because of obviously the angle that the ball was coming into the box. It was much easier for strikers to get onto a ball like that than one from coming behind them. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, from the right hand side, we were lucky. We had Giggs, who was that sort of tricky winger that would go in and out, and would dribble with the ball. Whereas when the ball came to David, you knew he's getting that out of his feet as quick as he can, but he's going to hit something. And if somebody's alive in that 6-yard box and that, in and around that penalty spot, we're in with a chance here.
A Greenwood, a Cavani, or a Rashford would relish playing with it, wouldn't they? Really, in terms of
absolutely, yeah. And a Ronaldo, because you got to remember how good a header the ball Ronaldo is. I mean, him taking that kind of a delivery and being able to put it into an area where Ronaldo could go and attack, because we've seen him head the ball. He just seems to be able to freeze in midair or something. It's like he's defying gravity. And for Beckham to be able to pick it out like that would have been phenomenal to see, to be honest with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I sent you a selection of goals today. I'm sure you had a look at them. Tell us some of the goals that comes to mind when you think of David Beckham. I mean, obviously the one from the halfway line at Wimbledon, I think it was, wasn't it?
Yeah, so there's Wimbledon on, and that's the opening day of the season, isn't it?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's the opening day of the season, and I think we beat Wimbledon 3-0 that day. And Beckham obviously scored from a shade inside his own half. It's an absolute screamer, you know, it really, really is. But he scored so many good goals. One of the goals I talked to you about earlier on, or just a minute ago, was obviously he got the ball against Spurs, middle of the park, drove forward a little bit. Next minute, just let one go and just, you know, nobody stopping it. You've the free kick, obviously, against Greece for England.
Massive.
Iconic. You've the penalty against Argentina in the World Cup to make it 1-0. They won the game 1-0 in the group stages, you know. That kind of rocket you went down the middle. You've got a couple against Barcelona at the Champions League the year we won it. I think he got one home and one away, if I'm right.
Yeah. I think that's right,
You've got, what else have you got? You've got his last one, which was quite a good goal against Everton at Goodison Park. That was his last United goal. And you've got a couple of pretty nice ones at Anfield, if I remember rightly as well.
That's right, 96, 97. Absolutely.
Yeah, a couple of good ones, yeah. With that little reverse back the opposite way. The keeper thought he was going one way and he kind of reversed it.
Left David James a terrible time.
Terrible time. Although I think John Arne Riise managed to level things a couple of years later when he got that one. Remember the Thunderbolt?
That's right.
He put it past Barthez on the roll. But yeah, he was just, there's so many goals. I don't remember him scoring too many bad goals, you know. Or I know people say there's no such thing as a bad goal, and I completely understand that. But there was no or very few tap-ins. Yeah. Everything was
at his level.
Absolutely, everything was putting his foot through it, or bending it, or swerving it, or you know, he scored a great goal one day for England. I think they beat Finland 5-0 at Anfield, maybe, and he scored like a half volley. And it was like a Scud missile. It was just rising on its way up into the, and you're going, Jesus, hell's got, you know, just a super striker of the ball. Passing, his crossing, his free kicks. He was danger. As soon as he got the ball, the other team kind of understood we're gonna be under some pressure here because of the quality that's gonna come from this guy, you know. Phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
He was rarely out of a goal of the month contenders vote anyway. Right. That's for sure.
If he had scored a goal that month, he was going to be in the mixing bowl at the end, because they were just screamers left, right, and centre. You know.
Yeah, I remember the one against West Ham as well. It was an absolute belter.
The lob.
Yeah.
I was at the game. Yeah. I was actually at the game in Upton Park.
Okay.
It was a Saturday afternoon. I think we beat them 5-3 in the end or something like that. And he lobbed David James. It was a little chip, and we were down one end, and you're just watching this float over his head, and you're going, "Wow, that's you know."
Yeah, I always those goals are just so memorable. Like the one at Wimbledon where you see Neil Sullivan and he's just bouncing into the net, like just trying to get back and absolutely destroys himself.
He got another good goal, if you remember. You were talking about the shaved head earlier. The day he played against Leicester, the day he shaved the head, and he kind of ran over and did this with the hair, you know. Yeah. And that salvaged us that day as well. So he was, not only did he score good goals, but he was a scorer of, he seemed to know when was a good time to score. No better obviously than England and that free kick, you know. I keep harping back to that. There was something just magical about that, even whether you're an England fan or not. You know, your team are on the verge of going out of a competition here. And up steps your captain. You're 30 yards from goal. It's central, so there's no real angle.
It was amazing as well, because the place went so silent you could nearly hear his heartbeat. And it was real one of those ones, you know, a slow motion one like you'd see at the end of a movie or something like that.
Yeah.
And the ball just boom, and the next thing he runs off, and even the celebration where he was just, you know what I mean, and everyone was surrounding him, and it was like, as you said, after the Argentina situation, it was such a lift off him, you know, that kind of way. It was incredible.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it just goes to show memories of the treble winning season. Obviously, he was very influential in that.
Phenomenal. Phenomenal. Didn't play in the final. Oh no, he did play in the final. Sorry, we missed Keane and we missed Scholes in the final.
Yeah.
Did play in the final, but hadn't got a super game. Obviously, he put the ball in the box for a couple of corners. But I think that my big memory from that season, and you mentioned it earlier on, was it was muted he was going to be Ballon d'Or that year. Because obviously United won the treble, and he was scoring these goals, these free kicks away in a new can, and he was just everywhere, and he didn't win it. And I think, I don't know whether sometimes I think players maybe feel like England isn't, if they want to win a Ballon d'Or or something like that, England isn't always the place to win it in. There seems to be a little bit more of a rub goes if you're in Spain or Italy, maybe because they feel like that it's a more technical league. And again, that could be something that maybe led them to believe, you know what, if I want to be the best player in the world, if I want to win these awards, maybe Madrid is somewhere I need to be,
And the Premier League at that time, remember, even though you had won the treble, the Premier League at that time as well hadn't got the pull and the influence that it has now, in terms of it's now the league, if you think about it. Back then, La Liga and Serie A and all, these were the big leagues, the big draw and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, now it's like, if a player from the Premier League was to win the Ballon d'Or now, it wouldn't be that much of a shock, really, because it's the amount of quality that's in there now and the ball that's played.
Now it's the Premier League and world football, but at that stage we were still, battling for stage rights with La Liga and with Serie A,
Yeah, and as you said, the amount of talent that was in those leagues was unbelievable at the time,
Yeah.
What about the influence? I mean, we touched on it earlier, the influence of Victoria and stuff like that. I mean, when you talk about Brand Beckham and stuff like that, there's a whole other 50% of his life there away from football, which is all this stuff that he has developed, all these other businesses and stuff like that at the time as well. And it was like it grew exponentially so quick, didn't it? And it was like as if it began at the start of a season, and by the end of the season, it was just monstrous.
Yeah, it was massive, absolutely massive, and it did kind of snowball like that. Where, as you said, like we had maybe Adidas and Brill Cream originally, and then it seemed to snowball, and all of a sudden there was cars and there was watch companies and there was fashion houses and everything. Everybody was just looking to get a piece of Brand Beckham, and they wanted to be front and center in that picture because they knew he was gonna represent the brand in a certain way, and they knew he was also gonna be to the forefront of everything, meaning that so was their brand,
And he was very clued in as well, and I presume a lot of this was her work in the background as well. He was very clued in at being the forefront in terms of setting fashion looks and stuff like that. How many times did he change his image? We went from the long hair to the blonde hair to the shaved head to the mohawk, to like a beard, to a schmeg, to a mustache. Like, he changed himself and reinvented himself so many times, but he was always at the forefront of it. He was ahead of the curve, and the followers always followed on then, didn't they?
Yeah, and I mean, we've seen all the faux pas as well, but even in the faux pas, he was head of those, and he was the first one to do those. When you seen him walk around in the sarong, and then all of a sudden people are saying he's wearing a dress, and you're like, he was able to project himself like that, and he always wanted to be at the forefront, and he was very comfortable in himself. That if somebody says, you know what, you're this, that, you're a brand, and he say, all right, whatever you feel like, I'm not worried about that. I'm very comfortable in, who I am and in my sexuality, and my wife here, and my kids, and, I'm on every billboard that you're going to pass by in the next 4 hours.
Yeah.
So why would I have any issues about, wearing things like this or doing things? He was very, very comfortable in his own skin. I think that allowed him to push Brand Beckham to the limits, because if you're a little bit insular like that, maybe you don't have the confidence to walk into a room wearing something like that, are you the right man to maybe represent some of those big companies? Possibly not. But if you can walk in there and you can make everybody in that room believe that they want to wear what you want to wear, and he had that, if you can do that, you're the guy that they want. we obviously talked. I'm just bringing it up now. You're having a little sip of Coke there, but when we did this the other night, I says to you, "Oh, bit of Coke," and you says, "Oh, I've got some of that whiskey in it." Hay Club. I buy Hay Club all the time, but I buy Hay Club because David Beckham is involved in it. It's his brand, and that's, and I still at this age, and even now he's not even playing football, I have that affiliation where I've got all that nostalgia as a kid, and you watched him growing up and you thought, well, this guy, he was the guy you want to go for a pint with and the guy all the women wanted to go for a date with. Yeah. So I still have that, and I still think, oh yeah, I'll buy this,
Yeah.
And he still has that draw. He still has that pulling power.
Yeah,
like
you see him even to this day, how dapper he is, and how but also he, you see him, he can go on the beach in Rio there in Brazil and play football with the locals, and do the UNICEF stuff that he does and all that kind of stuff. But I look at both of them and I look back then, it would have been very easy for both of them to crumble in terms of the British media. But they both they played the British media like a fiddle, didn't they? Really, in terms of. They use the British media to push their success even further rather than go in on them.
I'll tell you something the British media failed to see or maybe underestimated was how clever Victoria was, because they seen her and they thought, this young one's a dope, we can get at her. Oh, I don't think she was quite the dope you thought she was.
No.
And she's always been able to just stay ahead of the curve, just stay one step ahead of the paparazzi or of this story or of that story. And she always just kept things moving along at a nice pace where everybody else seemed to be in the rearview mirror, very, very clever and very underestimated in my opinion as well,
Yeah, their use of the media was very purposeful in terms of pushing the brand and what they wanted to get out there and stuff like that. Like, I remember even one year at Christmas, someone got me a bottle of David Beckham as a present. And I felt disgusted because I was a Liverpool player, but it just goes to show you, like, it's just the influence that they had was massive.
Well, I mean, if you remember back, even the announcement of the engagement, they walk outside the mother and father's house. Obviously, there was a bit of money involved there. They walk outside of the house and she's there in the coat and there's pictures, but there's paparazzi everywhere.
Yeah.
And that was at a stage where he wasn't Brand Beckham. He was only, one of the class of 92, let's say, or you know what I mean? So even from that stage, she knew what she wanted to do. And she knew how to get that out.
But it's amazing as well when you look back at it. I mean, there must be, what you call, I mean, sometimes when these celebrities get together with footballers and stuff like that, it's like it's taking advantage of a situation to push something maybe. But obviously with these two, there's genuine love there. They're still together to this day, and still as strong and as bonded when you see them in public and stuff like that. And obviously with the kids and the family and all. So obviously at the start you look at it and you go, yeah, here's the Spice Girl who's lashing on to the footballer, and the football latching on to the Spice Girl, and like, yeah, we'll give this maybe about 5 years and it'll break up, and whatever it is, it'll fall apart. The British media will go in on it and absolutely rip it asunder as they do and destroy it and stuff like that and all. But it shows the resoluteness of both of them, that like together still, Anna's in love to this day.
And I mean, it's not like they haven't had hurdles in the way either. It was the Rebecca Luce thing as well, and so that they had got ups and downs as any couple and married couple will have, but they stuck at it, and he wasn't willing to give up on her and vice versa, and there's a lot to be said about that as well. And they've obviously got a serious amount of love for each other as well,
and the fact that she was so influential in his move out of Man United as well, I mean, which leads us on to a nice segue now where we have to kind of touch on Bootgate, which is I think it was the frustration of Fergie had boiled over, and the talk was he threw a boot.
He kicked the boot.
Or he kicked the boot. But what a kick, because it split this guy just above the eye, didn't it? And he got a few stitches.
That's right. And that's what the famous line was. He said, if I could have thought I was going to kick that boot and I hit him in the thing, he said, I'd still be playing football.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
He kicked the boot off the ground and it just so happened to nip up and catch him above the eyebrow, literally right in the eyebrow, which is a softer part of the skin, which is easily split.
Yeah.
You see with boxers and all,
And I remember at the time as well, I mean, they always had these big black Range Rovers, didn't they? They always had these Range Rovers. And I remember he was leaving the ground or not leaving the ground. I remember he was leaving, and you know, they showed the full extent of the injury with the stitches in the eyebrow and all and stuff like that and all. And it was painting Fergie in a bad way as being this bully and stuff like that and all. And Victoria played up to it, of course, great in the end. You know what I mean? She was going.
He lapped it up.
Yeah.
Absolutely lapped it up. You know, it was another little way for her to kind of get him a step closer to the exit door at Old Trafford, and get that mega move that she certainly craved, and he wasn't kind of fighting hard enough against either. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What was your feeling at the time about the move and him leaving?
Other than being absolutely heartbroken, like, yeah, listen, we kind of went through a phase where, and that was probably the first in the line, where we started shipping players out to Madrid. We were like a feeder club for them at one stage, you know? Yeah. And yeah, he was the first one. And it was kind of, you saw the writing on the wall for a little while. But I still don't think I quite believed when the deal was met, you know? And if you think back, like, it was buttons.
Yeah.
It was absolutely buttons. What we got from, do you have a figure on it?
I don't have the figure to hand, but I know at the
20-something million.
Yeah, it was. I think when Fergie at those days, when he had made a decision and it was time to go, the price was irrelevant. It was basically Fergie showing his dominance there as the leader of Man United to turn around and say, I don't care what the guy is valued at. If he's surplus to demands now, that's it. It's done. And like the falling out, I remember, was massive. So like the move wasn't that shocking because a lot of stuff had been going on in the background. There's no doubt about it. But I think the United fan base at the time as well, and they have been through the years as well, they've been very loyal to Fergie as well as the leader of the club. And in terms of his decision making, I mean, you know, we talk about the breakdown with Kane. We talk about when Ronaldo left, you know, so many players, you know what I mean? And I mean, it's a testament to Fergie, obviously, how many times he has rebuilt this team. But this one always felt to me being a weird one. I would have thought Beckham was a lifer there. I would have thought that he would have started and ended his career there and all that other silverware that came with it.
I.e. a Scholes or a Gary Neville or a Ryan Giggs, you know? And he definitely could have been, I think. But I think the influence from outside and the influence of Victoria was too much for Ferguson to put up with. I just don't think he ever felt like he could control the situation the way he wanted to.
Yeah.
And when there was something that he couldn't control, it was easier for him to get rid of it than play second fiddle.
Yeah. It'd be an interesting dynamic if Fergie was managing today, wasn't it? Wouldn't it be, with like all this image rights stuff and everything that goes on and all the sponsorship being nearly 50% of your career really in your time? I think he'd struggle to adjust to it, wouldn't he?
Yeah, well, I think he would struggle, but I think, you know, I think you'd see him cut a lot of it out or cut as much of it out as he, you know what I mean? I think now there can be a lot of pandering from managers, you know, where they're pandering to such and such a player because they want to keep him on side because he's the big player in the team. And, you know, whereas Fergie had a slightly more ruthless look about it, that if you felt like you were getting bigger than Manchester United, there's the door, don't let it hit you on the way out. I don't think he'd have put up with a lot of the stuff that we've seen, you know, since he's left. You know, I think, you know, the likes of and not to kind of paint them in a bad light, the likes of the Pogba and the Lingards with the social media stuff. And of course, it's a completely different era and life is very, very different. You know, I think he'd been very accepting of something like what, say, Marcus Rashford did, because it was done in a humanitarian sort of way and it was done for the right reasons in life. But I think the TikToks and the, you know, all of this stuff, I think that would have just absolutely killed him to the point where he'd have probably put a blanket ban on a lot of stuff and just said, listen, you're here to play football. And if you want to play football and win games and win trophies, fine. If you don't, there's the door. I'll pick someone else up and I'll get them to play a tune out of it. You know what I mean? And I think that's the way it would have gone. Now, again, would you have ended up with the likes of maybe a Pogba at the club then? Possibly not. Would you have had an Ibrahimovic? Would you know, I think Ronaldo would have returned because I think Ronaldo's already spoken about, you know, I spoke to Fergie and as soon as I spoke to him, I was coming back, you know. So I think there's an attraction there for some players because Fergie has that same winning mentality that maybe some of the elite players have. But then is there that mentality with all the players where you see they want to be the brands and they want to have, these little Instagram accounts and their Twitches and their all of this stuff? I think that would have been too much for the man,
Yeah.
It would have been insulting to him as well.
Yeah, I mean, him coming from such a working class background as well and that kind of thing. But as you said, things evolve and, management styles have had to evolve as well. And that role of player liaison and all is now massive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I suppose what else can we say? I mean, to sum the man up, I mean, you best may as well sum him up. I mean, if you want to sum him up in a few words to finish out the show, because it should be you who do it.
I just think when I think about him, I just think icon. That's, I think, megastar. I think somebody that, transcended football. You little women in the street walking down the road and they knew who David Beckham was, but they'd never seen a game of football before. And I think when you become that big and you've done it, a lot of it through football and then obviously your exploits that have kind of attached to you through football, I just think that when you transcend the sport like that, and I think that really shows the power of the man and also the character of the man, that he was able to do that because he was such a personable kind of guy, He was always a good speaker, although, in a squeaky voice, he was a good speaker and he was a good talker and he liked to put things over properly for himself and for businesses or for brands that he was endorsing and stuff like that. So I just think the man was an icon and I don't think he gets enough plaudits from me.
Yeah, I tend to sum it up as in, whether you love or you hate Man United, you have to recognise quality and world class and all that kind of thing, and he was the epitome of that. And I have to say, at the time, I mean, from an outside point of view, I used to relish the wars that he had with Fergie and the battle that was in the press and stuff like that. Was the only thing I could cling on to in terms of a distraction to give other teams a chance at that time. So it was well received outside of the club anyway. But as always, a pleasure having you on. This has been your Legends series with Manchester United's number 7, David Beckham. Till next time, Darren.
Thanks, buddy. See you soon.
Cheers.